Hello there, I am Yage, the Talking Sunglasses. Today's video is the first of a two-part series, reacting/responding to a video that Tomdark put a little light on recently. It definitely gave me the idea to look at this video and the Toad McKinley videos that he recommended, and then, just dip my toes into looking into this community just a little bit, and damn! This is one rabbit hole that honestly just doesn't really seem to end. So as I unfortunately look into this gross community, I thought I'd do a video on the one with the spotlight on it at the moment. A little introduction to what could be a constant on my channel.
I am a zoophile.
Holy shit, what have I gotten myself into? So they start off the video by talking about how coming out as anything can be difficult, and then comparing zoophilia now to the LGBTQ community in the 1960s. This is honestly one of the most annoying and kind of infuriating portions of the video.
Hi everyone, you all know me as Sappho, and I wanted to make a video about coming out. Coming out with anything can be very difficult, especially if it's something that society currently views with disgust or is a bit dangerous to even come out with the way that things are right now. And it's a lot like when homosexuals were coming out in the 1960s, during Stonewall and those sorts of events.
No, coming out as a zoophile is not like coming out as LGBTQ in the 60s, because there's nothing wrong with being LGBTQ. I myself am bisexual, and it's honestly kind of gross that you would compare zoophilia and people rightfully pointing out that it's wrong to Stonewall in the 60s. Then they talk about how it's all just social propaganda, and that if it was still the 60s, most people would still be anti-LGBTQ. And as time went on, people started to accept LGBTQ, and that they think that zoophilia will be the same thing, that the same thing's going to happen with that. But it just won't.
And I know that 99% of my viewers, my community, you don't have anything wrong with homosexuals or gay people. You support them, you support LGBT, nothing against them. But I guarantee that many of you, even if you can't imagine it now, if you were growing up in the 1960s and were being fed all of the news and social propaganda about how gay people should stay in the closet, how it's unnatural and against nature, and all sorts of crazy shit like that, a lot of you would probably be anti-gay, anti-LGBT. And that's just how it is.
You know what? You're right. If it was the 60s, most people would still be very anti-LGBTQ. But the big difference here is people change their mind because there's nothing wrong with being LGBTQ. But there is something wrong with zoophilia. But we'll get to that. Then they essentially get into the reason for their coming out video. That really annoys me. And it's essentially because they knew that the info would leak eventually, so why not get ahead of it? Kind of a dumb reason.
And I respect you all, and frankly, this sort of thing would have leaked out eventually, especially with how cancel culture is these days and other furry drama. There would be people out there that, they want to have a gotcha moment, they want to build their fame and popularity and, expose people, and I'm just not going to give the opportunity for a Sappho exposed kind of video. And I would rather suck the air out of the sails of the Ransonas, and instead of letting this sort of thing build, just be open and honest about myself and my beliefs. And I want to clear the air. And
I like that they bring up furry drama. One, because they talk about a situation in the community that will be in a later section of this video. And two, even the furry community doesn't want zoophiles. Ah, jeez. But all jokes aside for a moment, they essentially wanted to take away the ability of people to out them. But if anything, that just makes it easier for people to dig into internet communities like this and gives channels like mine videos, or the ability to make videos like this. But let's move on.
say that, for the record, I am a zoophile. You did not mishear that. I am a zoophile.
Yeah, so the clip from the beginning of the video is, this is where that's actually from. 3 minutes into the video. And I mean, after all of the LGBTQ comparisons, it definitely feels manipulative to me. That is definitely speculative. I don't know if it was intentional, but it definitely feels like it was intentionally manipulative that way. Jeez, that's a hard word to say for a pair of sunglasses. Anyways, yeah, it definitely feels like they wanted you to be open to having sympathy for whatever they were about to come out about. And they wanted that connection in your brain. They then go on to talk about how they're attracted to dogs like German Shepherds more than humans, and the banner of their YouTube channel is a picture of a German Shepherd, which isn't anything out of the ordinary until you know what they're into, which then makes it a little creepy. They kind of start going into the ethics of Zoophiles and the way that they think, but then they kind of switch over to how they keep getting compared to the zoo sadist leaks that came out a couple of years ago, and how they aren't like that. And if you want more info on the zoo sadist leaks, check out Cecil Mcfly's 3-part documentary on them. I will warn you, they can be a little hard to listen to. But I honestly do commend Cecil for digging through all of that shit to have it documented. I'm sure that could not have been easy. So yeah, definitely go check out Cecil.
If you are willing to stay and listen to my view and explanation, that is the point of this video. It is to show that there are ethical guidelines. It's not so black and white like many furries think that it is, and a full explanation as to the way that I think, and the way that others think, and why. Zoophilia is often very misunderstood, especially because of certain very terrible people and what you may have seen in the news. And someone that I will not mention, if you remember that situation with the zoo sadism leaks a few years back. Unfortunately, when people think of zoophiles, especially furries, that's the person that comes to mind. That is the situation that comes to mind. And I'm talking about horrible abuses. And I'm not accusing a certain individual of anything here, but those leaks showed some truly horrendous people doing awful things to puppies, dead animals, animal gore, and other atrocities that I really wish would have been prosecuted, but unfortunately most could not, either by legal technicalities or so on. And it's a really sore thing for me because I would have liked to have seen justice in that case. And to be 100% clear, I am not like that. Most of the zoo community is also not like that and utterly despises it.
And I honestly believe them when they say that them and most zoophiles aren't like the people in those logs. Because the people in those logs are 100 out of 10 fucked up. They are off the fucked up charts here. And I agree. I wish they could have... There would have been more justice in that case. And it is truly fucked up that people like that are still able to walk the streets.
People who force animals into situations they don't want, physically and through other means, are completely deplorable and seen as rapists. Playing with an animal that is not sexually mature is like the equivalent of pedophilia, and it's treated as such.
Keep this point in mind because I will be bringing it up again in a minute.
I do not support those people, and they do not deserve the same title. They are fetishists and bestialists. I do not want them to be the face of the community, and they should not be the face of the community. It's like literal Nazis considering themselves furries in the fandom. You don't want them. We don't want them. We don't want that image to be what people think about. Ethical zoos are not like that.
See, and I have some issues with her pedophilia comparison there, but we'll get into that in a couple minutes. First, I just kind of want to touch base on what they think their ethics are, and that's kind of where they're finally getting to. And yes, if you're wondering, I did put their video to ×2 speed because they talk super slow throughout the entire video, and I do not have time to listen to them be super slow.
Zoophiles are among the most caring and loving people towards animals and their mates. We see animals as equals to humans, not as property or an object like in the eyes of the law and others.
See, that doesn't change the fact that animals cannot consent to sex with humans. But Sappho's here disagrees, and that is where we are going next. Let's move to honestly the most important part of the video, ethics and consent. This section is also quite frustrating, mostly because of their views on consent. But there are a couple things in their video to cover first.
Specifically, I and other ethical zoos follow what's called Zeta principles, Zeta being the Greek symbol, but also standing for Zoophiles engagement for tolerance and acceptance. So if you see that symbol on a furry, that's probably what they're referring to, or they're an ally towards that kind of cause.
Thank you. Now I know who to look out for while I'm researching this topic. Then they go into the Zeta principles, which they pretty much just list them out, so I'm just going to put them on screen right here. You can pause and read them if you want. And you know what? Those principles do make me feel like Sappos and similar zoophiles do truly care and love their pets slash mates. But even with these principles, and get used to hearing this because I might say it a lot in this section, animals cannot consent to sex slash relationships with humans. This next kind of hypothetical is really where you get to see how they view their mates and how they view consent.
Zoophiles are not the same as bestialists and fetishists who do not follow those principles. Hypothetically speaking, I would see my partner or my mate as an equal to myself. Everything would be out of love, care, and affection for their wellness and well-being. It would not be to serve myself and my desires. And a lot of people have issues with this sort of thing, which is understandable. I can understand the point of view that others have about.
Yes, it is understandable, because no matter how much you love your pet, they are on a completely different intelligence level. This isn't saying that dogs and other animals aren't smart in their own way, but they don't have the same sense of reason that humans do.
My views. The biggest argument, of course, that comes up is about consent and what is that like, right? And they want to compare like apples to oranges. They want to compare a grown, adult, sexually mature animal to like a toddler, basically, comparing apples to oranges.
This is where they start to get into their dumb consent argument, but let's hear them out. Side note, Jimmy Snow pointed out in one of his videos, you can totally compare apples and oranges. And you know what? That saying really doesn't make sense. And you know what? I agree. They are both fruits. But you know what? I'm not going to get into this.
And in my opinion, it's a bad faith argument. I don't think you can compare a sexually mature animal to a not sexually mature human. I think it's bad faith.
It's not in bad faith. Sexual maturity doesn't matter when it comes to consent. That's why teenagers who might be sexually mature because they've gone through most of puberty can't consent to sex with an adult. And it's compared to toddlers not because of sexual maturity, but because of intelligence and the inability for either of them to understand why or what they are doing. Honestly, if anyone's argument is in bad faith, it's yours.
But back to that hypothetical, and my view on it is that if my mate came up to me, loved me, and wanted something more in that moment, why would I deny them that need? I want to care for their well-being and help them feel good. At the same time, if the animal is uncomfortable or walks away, that's a no. That's a do not continue. That's a I do not consent.
This hypothetical is ridiculous. Good for you that you don't force yourself on your dog. But really, I really doubt that animals initiate any sort of sexual anything with a human without some sort of coercing. I don't know. This whole fucking hypothetical is ridiculous. And their views on consent are misguided at best and disgusting at worst. At this point in the video, and this portion is almost over, don't worry, I know it's getting a little long, they bring up a friend that can explain things in a less hypothetical way. And that's the second half of their video. I haven't watched it yet, but my next video will be covering that.
I have a really close zoo friend that can explain more in a non-hypothetical way in the second half of this video. And this friend has a female German Shepherd mate and considers her to be the love of his life.
Then they also go into how they realized they are a zoophile. And it honestly just kind of boils down to they always loved animals and then found a group of people on the internet. Because that always goes well.
And yes. But recently, after discovering there's other people with similar feelings to me and ideals it has inspired me enough to have this message.
And this right here is why this community needs to be looked into a little bit more. Finding online communities that confirm your point of view without any outside argument is how things like Flat Earth, anti-vax, cult and religions, and incels find places where everyone thinks like them, and it can be really reaffirming and is dangerous because it doesn't find the root of the problem and help fix it. It just allows people to dig into their beliefs. They then give people online resources that people can look into, and only one of them really stands out that Tomdark also pointed out in his Zooier Than Thou podcast, which has a fairly shady past to say the least. Toad McKinley did a great 3-part series on that. I definitely recommend if you want to know more about why this podcast was probably not the best to shout out. Definitely check that out.
And that would include online resources like the Zooier Than Thou podcast and some other people that I've met through some internet forums. And really what I want to do is to educate people about what it means specifically to be a zoophile, and that there are shades of gray, not this black and white evil nonsense, comparing someone like me to a freak that forces themselves onto animals and commits horrendous animal abuse.
They also want to educate and spread their message with this, which is why I do kind of feel the need to make this video. Zoophilia is not okay, no matter how ethical people like Sappho's make it sound. But this is the end of part 1. I will be going over the second half of the video in my next video, which will hopefully be up within a week of this one being up. With all this being said, please don't go and harass Sappho's. I know they have some weird and messed up views, but harassment will do nothing. It will only push them more into their beliefs. And they also mentioned that they are open to conversation or interviews, so maybe I'll look into that.
This is to have a personal conversation with my community, furries, zoophiles, and others, and I'm more than happy to answer questions or be interviewed in a neutral manner. With that out of the way, I'm going to switch to more of a podcast style.
I don't know. Could be interesting. Anyways, with that being said, thank you for watching. I know it probably wasn't the easiest watch, and after going through even the surface level of this community, I honestly don't know how Toad and Cecil managed to dig through all of the worst parts of the community. And so again, go check out their channels. Thanks again to Tomdark's channel for bringing this to my attention and saying that not many people had talked about it. Like if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, subscribe if you want more. I've been Yage, the Talking Sunglasses, and I'll see you next time.